Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations prepare for change and transformation. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA CIMA, the largest body of professionally certified accountants in the world. Today, we're going to talk about the top competencies for finance pros, CFOs, and controllers, and the latest research might surprise you. Joining me is Jen Cryder, CPA, MBA, CFO of the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs, PICPA. She's an accounting and finance leader, driving member value, named one of Accounting Today's top 100 most influential people, and the Philadelphia Business Journal Most Admired CEO honoree. She also has 15 years in public accounting, 7 as a CFO, and now a CEO working with corporate finance professionals and CPAs across the profession. Jen, say hello to our audience.
Hi, Tom. Great to be here with you today.
It's awesome to have you. I've been excited about talking to you about this cool research that you guys are doing. So today we're going to be talking about this research, the 2024 Corporate Finance Report, CPAs in the C-suite, Most Wanted Competencies for Finance Leaders. So Jen, what's different about this survey and what surprised you or stuck out?
Yeah, Tom, there's a couple of things that stuck out to me in reviewing the research. So to start, we asked the question of hiring managers. Oftentimes when research is done on competencies in the CFO spot, it's interviewing CFOs or people that want to become CFOs. In this case, we flipped that around and we said, for those people that are hiring CFOs into the role, what do they care about most? What are they looking for? So we were asking CEOs and other hiring managers that question to really get the perspective from who cares about that role and what are they looking for. And when we asked the question in that direction, we were finding a lot of very interesting answers. So when you look at the data, you might make the assumption that CPA was a fast track to a CFO spot. And I think in the past that used to be the case, but because of the way the CFO role has changed a lot, recently we found that less than half of the CFOs in S&P 1000 companies are CPAs today, and that number is declining. So not only is the number less than half, but it's getting smaller each year. So we're finding, in fact, other backgrounds becoming more valued by CEOs and hiring managers in the CFO spot. I think that's reflective of what we see across the profession, the accounting and CPA profession, where what CPAs need to bring to the table is very different. And it's got to be this interesting combination of both broad and deep skill sets. So we're really at this critical inflection point where the CFO role is being redefined. And we'll dig into this more, but the headline in our research, I think that was very surprising, is that the CEOs want a strategic partner. They're actually looking for almost a management consultant within the business. Now, in this day and age where technology is doing all of the work, the CFO skill set has to be built to be far more strategic. The CFO has to build a very different team around them to help support them in accomplishing that. And so if you want to pursue a CFO path, as a CPA, you've got to be really intentional about building a very different skill set.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting because that's exactly what we've been seeing with our Future of Finance leadership group that we put together a couple years ago. And interestingly enough, that's also reflected in the latest Ernst & Young report, the DNA of the financial controller. So not only is the CFO moving up into that new value partner, but we're seeing the controller is also moving into an expanded role, and the skill sets are going to be very similar to what you've got in your research. So it's pretty fascinating. Now, I caught this with CFO Magazine. They featured your survey in an article titled "CPA Skills Aren't Enough to Be a CFO, CPAs Say," where they emphasize this need for success or soft skills, the broad skills you talked about. But effectively, what got you here as a CPA won't get you there to that corporate CFO or even a big corporate controller role. So give me your take on that and talk about some of the critical skills that differentiate that CPA from the aspiring top spot of finance?
Yeah, I think CPAs are well positioned to succeed here. They just have to orient around some different skills. So, in our research, it identified that forward focused financial acumen was a top competency that CEOs were looking for. And, CPAs really have this great skill set in financial reporting and sort of historical data, whether it was financial or operational. So, our research revealed you've got to flip that and be forward looking. It doesn't have a lot to do with history, but CEOs are really looking for someone that can take all of that operational and financial knowledge and use it to fund growth into the future. So I think that was really interesting when I saw that come out in the research. The other skill set that came up is incredibly important is adaptability. And I talk with students often in my role, and I try to instill this when I'm talking with them. The most important skill set is not a specific technology, software, or platform or skill. It's not knowing your debits and credits even, but it's adaptability, that ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn as you're moving through your career. Because today we're talking about the creation of an entirely different professional when we think about a CPA as a CFO than what it used to be. And so we can only then assume that 5 or 10 years down the road, we're going to have to recreate that image as well. So in addition to being forward focused and being really adaptable, CEOs told us very clearly that they want a CPA that has a mindset around strategy and growth, that those are top concerns in the job description. They think that knowing the debits and credits, being able to analyze, work with data and financial information is table stakes at this point. So the CPA CFO cannot stop at the compliance function, but instead has to move into critical thinking, strategy creation, talent management, collaboration. All of those competencies ranked incredibly high in our research. And I think challenge CPAs to defy stereotypes a little bit. So it's a great opportunity for our profession. Underlying all of this, though, when you think about being forward focused in your financial acumen, being agile and being able to adapt and being able to think about strategy and growth, I don't want to lose the point that underlying all of that, CFOs have to have this incredible depth of emotional intelligence to be successful. Because to do each of those things that we're talking about here, they've got to be able to work not only across the organization very successfully, but also outside the organization with partners, customers, stakeholders, and not only kind of tell the story of how the business is doing, but also tell the story of growth. So just a whole different skill set that's being called for.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think it was CFO Dive had a conference a little while ago, and I heard a new term called new skilling. That's really, I mean, all of this is driven by the advent of all the fast moving technologies, right? Ever since COVID accelerated a whole lot of those kind of key trends and issues in technology. And then ChatGPT just put up like rocket engine on it and accelerated even more. And so to your point, this is very timely because all these skills are standing out. Every time we talk to groups, we're seeing that over and over again. So this is really a great set of research. We'll be putting a link in our comments today to this report. But there's a quote in your report that I really found fascinating. It says, to stand out, CFO candidates must build comprehensive skill sets that position them to drive strategy, plan for growth, and provide enterprise leadership. You were just talking about these, but these are yet another set of those critical skills that go on top of the CPA skill set. And can you elaborate on some of these for our audience?
I think you're exactly right, Tom. I think that they go on top of the CPA skill set. That's such a great way to frame that. Because you've got to come in with the CPA skill set, and we all know that skill set prepares you better than anything, I think. So just looking at my own experience, I was an auditor for a long time in public accounting, and I came into a CFO role here at the PICPA, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what does a CFO do? Because that switch from auditor to CFO is not as intuitive as you might think. But what I learned was the ability to ask great questions, the ability to understand the language of the business that CPA gives you. All of that was exactly the right foundation to be a very successful CFO. I just then had to layer on top of that The other things that we're talking here about, the ability to make great connections, not only across the entity, but across its external environment, looking at, financial and operational resources, the ability to influence without authority, all of those things led me to be able to drive strategy and growth. So I think some CPAs may hear this conversation and think, oh my goodness, they're telling me I have to do a whole different job. I think your way of looking at it as like a layer on top of is the perfect mindset, because it's not a different job. It's just taking those skills and deploying them in a really different way.
Yeah, it truly is new skilling in the wake of the new technology and the expanding role. And I think the other part of that role is you're going to see the CFO role taking on ESG and value creation, intangibles, lots of other key areas that are going to be a whole new exciting part. In our future finance group, one of our CFOs said, what I love about moving up in this new kind of value creation role is it takes all the soul sucking work of getting all the closing the books right, and being able to use what we learned in accounting about the language of business and what it means, right? So that was a kind of interesting piece. So I actually used ChatGPT to compare your research to our CGMA finance leadership program and our future of finance research. And believe it or not, they're very much aligned. Your skills and our skills were kind of lined right up, which is kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. And to your point, the way we think about it is we call it a T-shaped professional. So deep technical finance language, knowing the language of business inside out, which by the way, that's something that often finance people aren't great at. So if you move a finance person into a CFO role, they won't get the accounting as much. But that core language of business with then boundary crossing skills, and the skills you identified are the exact strategic and critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and storytelling across being able to cross boundaries inside and outside the organization into that new CFO finance controller role is what we're seeing. So it's really kind of interesting to see how all that works. All right, so tell us about your other research, how you're doing some more research and where we can get it. And we'll make sure we pop a link into the comment piece on this one as well.
Yeah, that's great. So we are with our insights research. Obviously, we did this report very focused on corporate finance competencies, but we're using that opportunity to look at other issues in the profession as well. A couple of the reports we published recently, I think, are really possibly useful to corporate finance professionals. So everybody's talking about pipeline and talent retention. That's obviously the hot topic right now. We did two different research projects that were intended to be companion pieces. One that really was a deep dive on pipeline. We asked high school students as well as general business school students, what are the things that would attract them to the accounting profession and make them want to pursue the CPA credential? Or conversely, what were the things that turned them off from our profession? So once again, asking those questions of the audiences that really matter in the decision making, not asking those questions of CPAs that have already gone through the process and have a little bit of confirmation bias. So if you are someone thinking about how to attract talent into the profession, the pipeline report might be really interesting for you. Tied to that closely then was our research on retention. And I think that's just as applicable to a corporate finance team as it is to a public accounting firm. We asked people in firms, as well as people that had just left firms, often they're going to corporate finance, what are the things that have either made you stay in public accounting or what are the things that have made you leave? And what we found there was there are so many different things that the talent is demanding today. So it provides, I think, a really practical roadmap. And I often say that roadmap is not just for the leaders in the C-suite or the partners at the top of the firm. Get that in the hands of your managers because they're the ones day to day that can influence those choices.
Yeah. Good stuff. So we'll pop those in here. And wow, what a great conversation and a great set of research. Any final thoughts you want to tell our audience?
I would say, Tom, I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be a CFO. despite the fact that we are talking about a lot of change and transformation here, I see so much opportunity in all of that. And so as long as you're not afraid to make the changes and grab the opportunity, CFOs are just beginning to make these huge impacts on their business. And I think we're just getting started there. The impacts are going to grow.
I think you're spot on. That's exactly that's what we're starting to see. And we're going to keep moving this whole conversation along. Thank you for being our guest. Lots of takeaways here. Clearly, this whole idea that what got you here won't get you there. And interesting enough, the one thing you said, now this also applies to client advisory service practices that are the fastest growing segment in public accounting, where people are doing outsourced CFO roles. And your point is exactly right. You come out of auditing and you feel like, well, I've got a handle on all this stuff. And then you're like, wait a minute, that's only a little part of the CFO job, right? Yes. Closing the books, getting them right is just the beginning.
Yes.
And so that's in the CAS practices, that's the same dynamic. They're moving auditors into those practices, and some of them are struggling because they don't have the right skill sets and they don't know what they don't know. It's kind of interesting. So this sheds light on both that corporate finance professional in addition to an advisory service professional in the CAS world. So thanks again. I would encourage our audience to then look into this report and start to make your own little map about what skills you might want to focus on for you and or your team. In fact, if you're already a CFO or a financial controller. You can follow Jen on LinkedIn at linkedin.com, Jen Cryder. And you can get to her website, which a lot of these resources will be on at www.picpa.org. And so I want to again thank you, Jen, for giving us your time and being here with us.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tom.
And you guys in the audience, yes. And then join us for the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern here on Future Ready Live on my LinkedIn profile. Thank you.